Since the Sandbox fans, it's been a minute, but we're back to announce the Boston Celtics are the 2024 NBA champions. Seeing a bunch of green on in the studio. We got the final shirt on. We got the parade tomorrow. Twan's going to be bombed at Government Center. We're going to be dragging him by his shoeways down the set of stairs.
By 9 a.m. I'll be incoherent.
But the last time we were together with you guys was for our NFL trivia episode. So happy to get the schedule predictions back going. Life got in the way a little bit. Summertime's coming, so we got some vacations. But excited to be back running down the AFC North schedule predictions. So, Twan, we're going to start this off with you. You're going to take the Browns first. We're going to run down their schedule after a couple weeks, just kind of check in, see what we're agreeing on, see what we're disagreeing, how we think the team might look, what they might need at that point in time, and just some questions that surround it.
So, yeah, Cleveland Browns made it to the wild card last year. Good team, man. They're a really good team on paper, one of the better defensive units in the entire NFL. Their one position that I had a question mark on, surprisingly enough, is their highest paid position, which is the quarterback. Don't know how much that gets resolved this year either, because we got Deshaun Watson again. They got DTR, and I think they just signed another quarterback, but off the top of my head, it was Winston. They signed Jameis Winston. So, again, I don't think that helps the room that much.
Yeah.
I think losing Flacco almost hurts it more.
How do you feel about that wide receiver room this year?
I like it a lot.
Yeah?
I like it a lot.
Okay.
It's Amari. It's Elijah Moore.
They also added Jerry
I think
Jeudy.
that's a great ad for them. And again, they have the core. They have one of the better tight ends in the league in David Njoku. And as always, they have one of the better O-lines in the NFL. So.
What are the expectations for Jeudy for you? Like, realistically? Like, obviously, you can give, like, an upside scenario. I want to know, like, realistically, because, I mean, we haven't seen, like, 1,000 yards. And I don't think, especially if Watson continues to play the way he does, and if they still have the same identity, I don't know if that's going to change with the Nick Chubb injury, but I'm not expecting that to like be past like 1,000. I just don't think that's the Browns' bread and butter, honestly.
I'm right there with you. I think they're a ground and pound team, and I don't think they need Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb to do that. I think they have Nick Chubb, and I think they're going to take it a little easy on him to start. So that's a beware guy right off the bat for fantasy football is Nick Chubb. Just
how far does that impact his draft position?
That impacts he's out of the first round for me.
Is he out of the first four?
First 4 rounds now.
Okay.
I just think the upside is so heavily there that even the first 4 rounds you got to take him.
I'm drafting Josh Jacobs above him now though.
I am too. I like him in Green Bay a lot. I think he fits Green Bay really, really well.
Saquon? You drafting Saquon above Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I think so.
I just think he's going to get less volume.
You think or Nick Chubb?
Saquon, I think Saquon's going to get less volume.
He
Hurts is going to run.
I think it's going to be so much more effective, though.
It could be.
I think it's going to be more effective, and I think Jalen Hurts is going to feel a lot better knowing that when they want to run the ball, it's not on just him to run the ball. True. He can be like, dude, I don't want to friggin' run it this play. Like, let's just give it to Saquon and let the dude take care of it.
Absolutely.
So
Browns got Dallas week 1.
In Tom Brady's inaugural announcing game as well, the Browns are gonna shit on the Cowboys in game 1.
Do you think so?
I do think the Browns take care of the Cowboys in game 1. I think the Cowboys are gonna have one of those Super Bowl hangover types, even though they didn't make it to the Super Bowl, but they're going, dude, like they might be mentally defeated at this point. And that's where I can see the Dallas Cowboys. When we get to the East, you'll see. I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to struggle a little bit this year, and I think it's going to be eye-opening, and I think it's going to open up a position at the coaching job for one Bill Belichick. Unless you have Sirianni available in Philadelphia or whatever, or Sirianni gone in Philadelphia, then I think it's an attractive job for Bill.
For sure.
But I just think that there is a cloud over Dallas right now, and I think that's going to affect them right in week 1. I think they're going to drop the game to the Browns because, again, they're going to struggle with that defense. I think the Browns are going to throw a lot at them. I think Myles Garrett's going to get in the backfield a lot. I think you got Newsome and you got Denzel Ward able to lock up those receivers. No one's going to lock up CD, but you got those guys that are going to be as good as possible on him. Not many people in the league play the game better than Denzel Ward, and not many twos in the league. There might not be a better 2 in the league at the cornerback position than Greg Newsome.
Cool.
So
that'd be debatable.
So, well, Snead's not there, and it's not Snead and McDuffie anymore, so they're splitting them up.
For sure.
But they go to week 2, and I think the Browns drop a classic BS game to the Jaguars in week 2. The Browns are a better team than Jacksonville. I'm not high on Jacksonville this year. When we do the South, you'll see that. But I think there's going to be a weird, sketchy game that the Browns are coming high off of that Dallas Cowboys W and they drop a game to the Jags.
Okay.
It just feels like one of those weird ones.
Do you think the Jags are strong enough to like just make sure that happens against a good defensive team?
Yeah, I think they can fluke a win. Like I think this is going to look like one of those fluke wins, especially by the end of the year. It's hard to call game 2 of the season a fluke when you haven't seen how things have shaken out yet. But I think by the end of the year, you're going to look at this and say, how the fuck did that Jags team beat this Browns team?
For sure.
Week 3 comes around. They play at home against the Giants. I think they have a win there. I think they go to Vegas, and I think they have a very competitive game with Las Vegas.
Okay.
But I do think they win it. So I think they start 3-1 right there. And before I have them go to Washington...
Yeah,
what do you think of the first 4 games?
I have them starting 2-2. My thing is, I think what you said about the game 1 versus Dallas is absolutely right. I think it's going to be sloppy. Also, keep in mind how good Dallas was at home last year, and on the road, like they were a drastically different team. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I think it all depends on, how the Browns are looking and what their identity is. If they're going to come out and they're going to, ground and pound the football and, Deshaun Watson isn't going to have like a crazy amount of turnovers, then yeah, like their defense didn't drop off. Like I think that they still have a good defense, and I think Dak played MVP type level last year. Is that going to happen 2 years in a row? There's questions. Their ground game is going to be better. Zeke is back, and I feel like that's an important takeaway, at least on the offensive side, because if they can control the game with, CD having a guy like Zeke coming back in and being able to have that role, and obviously there's other guys that are going to develop.
Ferguson,
yes, exactly.
Cooks is a generational veteran wide receiver
for sure. But I have them losing versus Dallas. I actually think that they beat the Jags and the Giants. I think the Jags get some fluke wins, like more towards like their London time, because like I just feel like they have an advantage. They're going to be out there for like 2-3 weeks in a row. So I think like they. And I feel like what we've seen the past couple of years too, like the Colts and the Jags start off the season like so weird. Like they really do. Like ETN won't get like 12 touches week 1, and then week 4 will come around and he'll get like 26 with 3 touchdowns.
Yep, they're such a weird team, man.
But I actually think that the Raiders week 4 are going to beat them.
Love that.
I think it's going to be a competitive game, honestly, and I don't have crazy high expectations for the Raiders. I think that they're going to be very comparable teams. I do just think like Devontae still had a pretty solid year last year, and if you're saying it's either another year for Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew's an improvement at that quarterback position, I would kind of see that going in the right direction, and it's fully Antonio Pierce's team now. So the only thing that like with the Browns, like in the record that I gave them, that's making me have like different feelings is like Vrabel's there, but it's like what is his role going to be? Like it's still Stefanski's team. So is that just like conversations about schematics and preparing for a week? Because like then I don't feel like that impacts it that much. But if Vrabel's like out there coaching with Stefanski, then like yeah, like this team can really turn it around.
Dude, I think having Vrabel there is huge. I love that, though, because, I've been talking about Vegas for the past, couple episodes that we've done is, like, I'm even bringing it up in trivia. I think fucking Vegas is going to be good this year. Like, I think they make the playoffs this year. So when we get to the West, you'll see what I have for a record. But I do think they win in Vegas. Obviously, they started 2-2. I have them, again, the games that the Browns are going to lose this year are going to be weird and fluky. I have them dropping a home game against Washington.
Okay.
Just feels like a weird game to me. I think this is going to be one of those games where Washington starts slow, but this is the unfortunate game where they go in against a good team. Everyone says they're going to lose. They're going to be 13-point underdogs, and Jaden Daniels is going to run all over the field. We might not see that all season from Jaden Daniels, but I think this is the first game where teams are like, oh, fuck, like he really can do that.
Do that shit, yeah.
So I just think it's going to be one of those weird games that...
You think it'll take them 5 weeks?
Yeah. I think, dude, I
think they have a good wide receiver room.
They do, but Washington's really going to show something to me before I can just stamp it to them. Like,
yeah,
it's hard. I'm going to have the Browns dropping that game to Washington, but I have them ripping 2 in a row. I have them going into Philly and getting a win.
Wow.
I have them going right into Philly and getting a win. I think they're weirdly tailor-made to beat Philadelphia. The way they match up is great. And again, you can do football math, but that doesn't always make sense. Matchups are the things that make the most sense, and I think they match up really, really well, especially with the receivers on those corners, especially with the way they get after the passer. Saquon could be an X factor in that game.
Yeah.
But again, you might have Nick Chubb by week 6 right there, finally be fully healthy again. Bengals, I think that at home, you're gonna see I have them split, but they're gonna beat the Bengals when they're at home, and that's what that week 7 is. They do drop the game to the Ravens at home, though.
Okay.
So I do think the Ravens come in and beat them after having 2 solid wins, and that brings them to Week 8. Week 9, before we get to the bye week, I'm going to finish that off. They're going to get a W over the Chargers at home.
Okay.
So to this point, I have them with 3 losses. They play 9 games. So it's 6-3 to this point.
Okay. After the 2-2 start for me, I have them going 2-3 over the next 5, and I think that's when things like kind of start to change, and it's like, all right, are we in panic mode or are we in like contention mode? I think a lot of that depends on what the division records are. Like we're seeing that they get the Bengals and the Ravens back to back. I think that they split those games. I actually have them beating the Bengals, then losing to the Ravens.
Yep.
Like it's just tough for me in like a division like this. Like when we're predicting their schedules, like I'm only doing 3-3 splits for these teams across the entire AFC North, because that's really how it goes. And if something changes, it's going to be like 2-4 and 4-2 for like one organization. But I don't feel like last year I thought the Ravens were like head over heels, like much better than the rest of the group. I don't feel that way this year. I think that this is a much more competitive group. I think the game in this slate that's the most interesting for me is I actually have the Browns losing to the Chargers right before the bye. And that's not to say that I think the Chargers are going to be like a crazy great team. I just really think that they're going to be a disciplined football team, and that's what they weren't for like quite some time. I think traveling to Cleveland is going to be, like an obstacle to definitely overcome, but I think Jim Harbaugh is going to really have a presence as part of that team, and watch out for Ladd McConkey this year. Like I'm telling you, like a top 5 fantasy like round pick, wide receiver 2 to start the year. Like dude's going to ball. And I think like right before a bye, the Browns might be like, ooh, like we have the bye coming up, and just kind of like look for that week ahead, especially for a team like the Chargers that's kind of been on the back end, especially in their division. But we
what we do on Since the Sandbox, man. We give credit to the rookies for fantasy.
Yeah,
that's what
we definitely do.
Did it for Bijan last year. Granted, Bijan showed all those flashes. It's not on him, but he's still like, the only reason it seems that way with Bijan is because when we talked about him, we're like, he's number 2.
Yeah.
Like, and there's only one guy ahead of him, maybe, and that's Christian McCaffrey.
For sure.
Everybody else, we're like, Bijan's the next guy. Granted, Bijan was still like a top 10 guy.
Yeah. It just like Gibbs came in and kind of stole that light a little bit.
100%.
So. That takes us to the bye, Twan. We got 11 to 18. Why don't you take us to week 14?
Let's do it. So we got going into New Orleans, they get a win. At home, they're going to beat the Steelers. And then they're going into Denver and getting a win. So I have them going with a 3-win stretch right there, finishing 13. But
have that same stretch, by the way. That's a Thursday night game, a Monday night football game included in that.
Mm-hmm. And then right to wrap up with week 14, Steve. Actually, I'm going to rip the next couple off because we have the same 3 up there. I have them going on a 3-game losing stretch. I have them losing to the Steelers in Pittsburgh. I do have them losing to KC. See, when I talk about matchups, I think KC's one of those teams that match up well against the Browns.
It's just a pass-heavy offenses. I feel like that's what does it.
He can scramble to get long enough time to.
Yeah.
Again, where Ward and Newsome can kind of hold things off, they're going to have 3 receivers out there, and I don't know about that third corner, or even a safety covering them. And then I have them losing in Cincy to the Bengals, so 6 over that stretch, Steve.
Well, I have them.
3-3.
You had them going on a 3-game win streak and a 3-game lose streak. I have them going on that 3-game win streak and a 4-game lose streak.
Okay.
So I of course you're not going to have Miami beating the Browns, but I obviously think that Miami's a little bit of a better team, and I just think for the same points that we just talked about with the Kansas City Chiefs, adding Odell to the wide receiver room, and like if Achane is actually going to line up like as a wideout in that offense like they've been practicing right now, then like you're talking about 4 or 5 guys that can like actually like catch the ball, and they just don't have the defensive depth to like really keep up with that. Miami's defense is going to be the real question this year. Like I know that they had a shit ton of injuries last year, but I'm excited to see if that offense can actually take like another step. I know that's really tough because like Tua led the NFL in passing yards last year, and they were probably a top 3 scoring offense for at least more than half the year. But to round it out, I actually have the Browns winning the last game of the season versus the Ravens, and I think that there could potentially be playoff implications there. I think it would be if they had a better record than what I'm giving the Browns. I have the Browns finishing with an 8-9 record. Still feel like that's pretty solid, and you take another division game, you're talking about a game above 500, also dropping a game from an a division opponent's schedule. And I feel like that's really the difference, and that's how close this division is. And this is not like an 8-9 bad football team. This is like 8-9 and like, shit, there was probably a game or two that like they had one extra pick or like maybe too many penalties, and that was the difference in that game for being a 10-win football team.
Right. Steve, when we go to the last 2 games, I have them beating the Dolphins, and first of all, the reason I have them beating the Dolphins is, I do think they're a better team, but I don't think the Dolphins can play when it gets to December, and I don't think they can go to Cleveland in the freezing cold and get a win.
Yeah.
I think with what we've seen from the Dolphins, they fall apart at the end of the year too, so that's just a match made in heaven for me for the Browns to steal that game, but I actually have them dropping the game to the Ravens after that, so I have them going 0-2 to the Ravens.
Oh, wow.
Strangely enough, I think the Ravens know exactly how the Browns want to play every time. Now, this game at the end of the season, overtime. I could smell overtime all over it, and the Ravens just kind of do their thing to get the win here. And this was where I have the Browns finishing 10-7. So I have them going 10-7 back-to-back years.
That's a playoff spot.
That's a playoff spot. That's a wild card spot. Steve, you're going to see...
so it's not on top of the division.
It's not on top of the division. There's one team that I have a game above them. You're going to see when we get there. But, dude, this division's good. I'm going to let you guys know right now, every team in this division has a winning record.
Wow.
Every single.
Wow.
I think that this division
9 wins
is
above.
going to run roughshod over the entire NFL. You're going to see teams in other divisions look really bad. I think it's going to be a top-heavy and a bottom-heavy NFL this year.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I feel like in recent years, we've kind of seen like the middle of the pack really stick out only with like 4 teams that have like less than 6 wins. And like 6 wins is a bad season when you play 18. Right. But I just feel like there's so many different factors, like is health part of that? Are you like a young football team? There's so much to consider. I'm going to jump in with the Steelers next, who I have just a bit of a better season, and we're going to break it down right now. So I have the Steelers also starting off the year 2-2, similar to the Browns, beating the Falcons at home week 1. I feel like that's a gimme. Like, everyone's going to be all like the Falcons, they're going to win this division this year. They'd be the first team to go ahead and drop that game like right away. And like the Steelers are a really disciplined football team, and Tomlin signed up for the next 3-4 years there. So I think they're going to make a statement with whoever the quarterback happens to be for them. Weirdly enough, losing versus the Broncos week 2, losing versus the Chargers week 3. So those are 2 teams that I feel like everyone would assume that the Steelers are better than. But all these expectations are going to come around. Oh, the Steelers had a really good offseason. Oh, like they just came in the season through 3 weeks. They're 1-2. Like, what's going on here? I feel like every single time we start to overreact about the Steelers early in the season, that's when they always like catch up on the back end. Like, no matter who it is, no matter how it is, no matter why it is, it's just the way it works out. But getting a win week 4 versus the Colts, sorry, Lou. I just think that the Steelers are going to be a team that's good enough to play with everybody, but they'll also play down to their competition. Yes. And there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are like that. But I think, the Broncos are going to sneak a couple games from people. I don't think that they're going to be a team that's going to win, 7 games or anything like that. But I just feel like people are going to overlook them so much. And I know Sean Payton was saying a bunch of wild, crazy shit throughout this past season, the offseason, and everything like that. But he's not the worst coach in the NFL. Like, last year really looked like it. But, yeah. But, I mean, we've just seen, like, he has an idea of what he's doing. I just think he kind of wants, like, the right personnel around him, and that might take some time. But I think he's going to do a better job than Hackett. I think he's going to do a better job than, a lot of the past coaches have in Denver the past couple of years. And I think it'll be a tough game. It'll be like a 16-14, like a field goal, like at the end of the game to really be the difference there. I'm sure that that's a different takeaway than what you have.
I got them going 2-2. We're opposite on all 4 games.
Okay.
I have them dropping to the Falcons early.
Of course you do.
I do think the Falcons are going to be good, but I also think week 1 is going to be noise with Russ starts to play poorly. It's all get Fields in immediately. Oh, Fields play, or they decide, Fields is actually the guy. Get Russ in immediately. I think there's just going to be a little bit of tension in that locker room to start out. They lose. Tomlin gets them right back on track. He goes, guys, we got 2 pretty fucking easy games on paper here.
Yeah.
Let's go get those wins. Let's round out what this team is, get some confidence back, and just in time for them to get that confidence back to beat the Chargers, to beat the Broncos, they drop a game to the Colts because I do think Indy's very good.
Indy's going to be really good, and I think like we're going to, when we start talking about the AFC South and like Houston's expectations and how people think Tennessee's going to be, a piss poor team, I'm not saying or giving anything away about my schedule predictions, but that's just, the outlook going into the year right now. But I think as long as Anthony Richardson stays healthy, and I know that that's still been a question through this offseason, that team can easily win 10 games. Right. But over the next 4 games, we have 3 primetime games, a Sunday night football game versus the Cowboys, Sunday night football versus the Jets, and Monday night versus the Giants. I have them beating the Cowboys Sunday night football versus the Cowboys, losing 2 straight to the Raiders and the Jets, and then getting a W Monday Night Football versus the Giants right before the bye week. So at this point in time, it has them at 4-4. I think if you told me through the first 8 weeks that that's what they were going to be, regardless of what the games were, that would be like a pretty good stretch, knowing that the Jets are probably going to be a competitive team. Cowboys are going to be a team that I feel like will win more than 7 games, like without getting into details and specifics. Falcons could potentially be, a division winner, and you never know what's going to happen with the Colts and the Chargers. So I feel like that's a really realistic record, through that point in time. But that gets us to the bye week looking 500.
We're damn close. The only thing I have different is I have them actually sneaking the game against the Jets.
Okay.
I think this is a game where it's going to come down to the end, and Tomlin's just going to outcoach Robert Saleh a little bit. I
just feel like Aaron Rodgers is the difference in that game, honestly.
100%. I'm looking at the Jets schedule, man. I think they're going to be really fucking good this year. It's coming from a Pats fan, man. I'm just going to shoot it straight. I think the Jets are one of those teams this year that...
What's really good, though? Like 12 wins?
Roster. Yes. Yeah.
We don't got to go too in-depth because we're talking about the North. But.
Right. I think that's where they're going to be. Looking at the Steelers here, though, at the bye week, I got them 5-3. I think they're fucking thrilled with that start.
Yeah.
Especially being in that division that they're in, 5-3 at the break.
Absolutely. And like I said, like the division records, like the division games that we'll see more in like the back end of the season, I'm pretty sure they go in a 6-week stretch where they're playing a division opponent 4 weeks in a row.
Yep.
So I think that's when we're going to kind of see, like, is this team going to be, a 1 or a 2 in that AFC North in a really competitive division, or are they going to be closer to that back end? But right after the bye, you get the Commanders. That's an easy, layup right there for them to get back on track. You get a week to prepare for a rookie quarterback, kind of seeing what's going on. Obviously, they have a new coach in Washington. I think that's something they have to keep in mind. But Washington's going to play to its strengths. Like, they added some veteran pieces that I feel like are going to do well for them. I think their defense is going to be sneakily improved just by adding, a Bobby Wagner in the middle of that. Him teaching Jamin Davis, some of the ropes, I feel like is going to be extremely beneficial.
That's his kind of mold, too. Like,
for sure.
Jamin Davis is that kind of mold.
For sure. Getting a loss versus the Ravens week 11 and then another one week 12 versus the Browns on Thursday Night Football. That's going to be right around Thanksgiving time. I feel like that's when things are really going to start to, heat up. But after that, 4 wins in a row. And these are some like very crucial games. So have them beating the Bengals week 13, the Browns week 14, and then going to Philly and Baltimore, getting 2 wins on the road. And I feel like at that point in time, they start to feel a little bit better. And I think, if they finish at that 5-3 spot right before the bye, like you said, and then they go on this stretch, you're talking about a 10-11 win football team, and that's much different expectations to a team that's closer to 500. But I also have them dropping the last 2 games of the season versus the Chiefs week 17. Like, that's a tough game for them, regardless of how they're playing. And then the Bengals week 18, I feel like that game might mean a little bit more for Cincinnati, who I actually have finishing on top of this division. Anthony, I'm sorry, last year was your year. Like, I'm not saying that they can't come back and, win another 10 games. Like, they absolutely can, but the Ravens, I felt like, were a top 3 team in the NFL last year, and Lamar had an MVP season, as we clearly saw, and, just fell short, in one of the most important games. And I just feel like for some of these divisions in the NFL, it's really tough to be on top like 2 years in a row. So just think that's, the reasoning. But with that being the case, that has the Steelers finishing with a 9-8 record, 3-3 inside the division. And I have the Ravens finishing with a very similar record, and the Bengals only winning a game or 2 more to be on top of that division. But they're going to take us through the back end of your Steelers and the Ravens before I get to Cincy.
Yeah, Steve, I have them finishing out the season 5-4.
Oh, wow.
So 5-4, I do have them dropping a sneaky, crappy game to the Commanders.
Okay.
I think that's just going to be games where the Commanders sneak people, and that's what it is. I don't think they're that good of a team. I just think they're going to sneak a couple teams that they're not supposed to. I do have them beating the Ravens at home, dropping 2 in a row on the road to the Browns and Bengals, getting a win over the Browns at home, going into Philly, taking that win, but then going into Baltimore and losing. And rounding out with 2 wins, I do think they're going to sneak. It's going to be a tough game.
Wow.
But I think they're going to beat the Chiefs there in 17. Don't worry, I'm not going to just.
I was going to say,
the whole time.
I'm dying to see like how this record's going to end up, because you have both the Browns and the Steelers beating the Chiefs right now.
No, I had the Browns losing.
Oh, okay.
I had the Browns losing.
I was going to say.
It wasn't like that. But 10-7 is how they finish. So they tie with the Browns there. And I think we see 2 wild card teams.
All right, so
out of the AFC North.
With a 10-7 record for the Steelers, I want to talk about like who are some key like playmakers for this team. Like is Pickens finally gonna evolve into like the player that we think he is? Is Najee gonna have like this resurgence because his option never got picked up, and he did have a good second half of the season last year? Or is it just like a big Warren type of backfield, and things are different in Pitt?
Pickens is gonna play great. Najee's just like Derrick Henry, not the way they play. They're not at the same skill level yet. But Derrick Henry's first 3 years in the NFL were nothing to write home about. They were very meh. Everyone talked about him big.
Very meh.
And they were very meh. Najee Harris got talked about big, pretty meh. But every year he still gets over 1,000. He's due for a breakout. I think he's going to have a great season this year. 1,250, 1,300.
Scrimmage?
Maybe more.
14 scrimmage?
Maybe 14 scrimmage, something like that. And I do think Warren will get involved. But
what do you got for scrimmage for Warren?
In this season,
758?
8, yeah. But at some point in this season, Justin Fields is going to take over the quarterback room, and he's going to play really, really well.
Wow. You think so?
He may not be a top quarterback in the NFL yet.
I actually feel like he can get moved in the middle of the year.
I think he's going to play really well, and I think Russ is just going to sit back and go, dude, it's your time.
Wow.
I think that's the right quarterback to do that. They finished 10-7. They get a couple of strong wins this year. They may get bounced immediately in the playoffs, but I think they're going to find a way to make the playoffs. The over 500 from Tomlin's happening. It's gonna be a fun. The AFC North is gonna be super fun to watch, and this has got to be the hardest schedule prediction division to start right.
No, I know, and then we're going to the NFC North right after this. I'll run through the Ravens, and then you can take us to the Bengals right after, and we'll talk about it. Week 1 for the Ravens, real tough. First, the Chiefs. Look, like the Chiefs just kind of showed that like they know how to play the Ravens, like offensively and defensively. Do I think that this is a game the Ravens can win? Absolutely. Do I feel like there's a better opportunity than week 1 to beat them? No, I don't. I actually feel like week 1 is their best opportunity to just sneak them, punch them in the mouth, and remember what happened at the end of your exit, for the AFC. I just don't see that being the case. Like Thursday Night Football, I definitely thought it was going to be a different opponent. Like I feel like this should be a Week 10, Week 11 matchup. Get to see what these teams look like a little bit. But, maybe injuries happen on Baltimore's front, and, this is the most healthy that they'll be all season. After losing to the Chiefs Week 1, have them winning 2 straight, winning versus the Raiders and winning versus the Cowboys on the road. That's a tough game. We're going to Dallas, Jerry's World, and getting that win like that. But that's putting the Ravens' respect back on the map. Lamar Jackson's back in all those great conversations. Then I have them losing to the Bills Week 4. I know Kev will be really happy about that. I know Uncle Tony isn't going to be too happy to hear, the way things are playing out right now. But, that's not hate. I feel like people are going to really underestimate who Buffalo is because their additions and subtractions through the offseason. I still feel like as long as Josh Allen's there, that's going to be a 9-10 win football team. And that's why I'm hesitant with the Jets. It's like, yeah, Rodgers can really take that team to a different level. But is that level still going to be, better than Josh Allen? Because like right now, I don't want to say that Buffalo is the best team. I feel like the Jets have the opportunity to be the best overall team, including their defense. Miami left an impression last year, and people would think that Buffalo is on the skid because of the way everything planned out. And then it would just be, the Patriots' expectations to develop a young quarterback and take that division over in a couple of years. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see the way the AFC East shakes out specifically, because I think that's going to have impacts throughout the AFC altogether. But that has them 2-2 through the first 4 weeks. 2 primetime games that have them dropping.
Wow. So I got them getting the W over the Chiefs because I do think you're right. I think the time to beat the Chiefs is week 1. Saw the Lions do it last year. I think the Ravens are going to get it, and I think the Ravens have this game circled more than they have any game circled. And it's
for sure.
It's in week 1.
They definitely do.
This sets the tone. They get that win. They put everything into that win, and then they're going to go to Las Vegas and lose.
Okay.
But after that, they're going to go into Dallas and win, and they are going to beat Buffalo at home. I think it's going to be tough for Buffalo to go into Baltimore and get that win. So I have them starting 3-1 to start the year.
All right. I mean, that's a solid start and can very much go that way. 1 game changes, and that's the difference in a record. I have the Ravens after that loss versus the Bills. They're mad. They're pissed. Like, they're ready to, prove themselves. They get a win versus the Bengals, win versus Washington, get 2 in a row really quickly. Actually have them losing to Tampa. I sneaky think that Tampa's going to be the same team that they were last year. Overlooked them early in the year. They start to prove their worth. They might go on a little bit of a skid. I think that last year was a really good year for Baker. I think it would be really tough for Mike Evans to replicate the year that he had last year, knowing how historic that it was. But I think that this is going to be a team that's going to play people really tough. And I actually think that they're built very similar to the Ravens, if you want me to be honest. Obviously, like, the quarterback skill set's drastically different. But I just think, like, the way that they play, like, they run their team through the defense, and they usually use their offense to complement. And obviously, when you have an MVP as part of your offense, it's easy to stand out a little bit more on that side of the ball. But after that loss to Tampa, Week 7, Monday Night Football, I have them getting 2 wins in a row versus the Browns, versus the Broncos, and then the Game 2 versus the Bengals, Thursday Night Football, Week 10, I actually have that being a loss. So the splitting versus the Bengals, feel like that's kind of like an expectation. That's not to say that the Ravens can't sweep them. They absolutely can, and honestly, we've seen that if any team kind of gets the best of the Bengals, that it is the Ravens, like, of all teams in that division. And that's why, like, when I talked about, like, the Browns and, like, the Steelers, I think the Ravens have a little bit more time playing a little bit more of, like, that tougher football, or I would compare, like, the game style and flow of Cincinnati a little bit more comparable to Kansas City, if you want me to be honest. But at that point in time, that has the Ravens at 6-4. Feel like that's a pretty solid start through 10 weeks. Not where they want to be, but still solid start.
For sure. So I get them actually losing to the Bengals because I had them beating the Bills. So I do have them dropping the game to the Bengals in Cincy, but I have them beating Washington. I also have them losing to the Bucs. So I see that exactly the same way you do. But they're going on a 3-game win stretch. They're going to beat the Browns, Broncos, Bengals. The 3 Bs. They're taking care of them.
Okay.
And that brings us to going at Pittsburgh.
You ever had a B-boy?
I haven't had a B-boy.
Oh, we got to take you to Jim's. Jim's make people, they're like breakfast subs.
Yeah.
You do like some eggs, bacon, like whatever you want to do in a breakfast sub with some James River.
Put James River on
everything. Oh Put God. That shit on everything.
That's the real Frank's Red Hot right there.
Yeah. Shout out to Jim's. Shout out to Jim's, man. But no, I mean, I'm happy that we kind of see that like a little bit similar. I'm interested to see how the back end stretches out. 2-1 up until the bye week. So that's a win versus the Steelers, a loss at the Chargers. I want to talk about this one. Chargers got Greg Roman. And I'm not saying that that's enough for them to beat, but I think they have a lot of their personnel. You're talking about Gus Edwards. You're talking about J.K., both there. I feel like that's something that you want to keep in mind. I want to say that they got a couple defensive players, too, from the Ravens. I'm drawing a blank at the top right now, but I think the Chargers are going to be able to beat some good teams. Like, I really do. And I think Monday Night Football, also, while I'm doing this, trying to keep a betting perspective in mind, everybody and their mother is going to be betting the Ravens at this point in time, without considering injuries or anything like that. This would be a West Coast game. I could see the Chargers getting on top. And then a win versus the Eagles week 13. That would take them to 8-5 going into the bye. With a couple games left, it is a late bye, and it depends on the time of year, like in the type of team that you are, right? If you're rolling and you're like injury-free, a week 14 bye is great because you get a rest back end of the season right before the playoffs.
Right.
But if this is a team that's banged up like they kind of have been the past couple of years, especially on the offensive line, this is a different story that the bye week comes around at this time. But I'm just going to finish it out. I have them getting a win versus the Giants and then dropping 3 straight at the end of the season. Versus the Steelers, at the Texans on Christmas. Really, really important game. And versus the Browns week 18. So this has the Ravens finishing with 9-8. There's definitely a couple games in there that you could say, oh, they're going to win this one. But you can also say that there's a couple games that they're going to drop that, I put them down in the win column. As a 3-3 division record, still feel like the Ravens are a really competitive team. This absolutely can be a playoff team. But where I have 2 teams in this division going 9-8, one with a record above that and one just 8-9, every single game is going to matter. And I feel like what'll really be the difference in a division like this, where they're all competitive, is health.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Steve, to finish it out, I have them dropping one at the Steelers, beating the Chargers, losing to the Eagles, then they go into the bye, desperately needed bye. They're gassed out. But then going 3-1 to finish the season with their only loss at the Texans. Okay. So I have them finishing 11-6 atop the division, Steve.
Wow. Ravens running it back.
Ravens run it back. Not by a game, not by a lot. They don't get the 1 seed. But they're going to be right there at the 3 seed with an 11-6 record.
Dying to see who your 1 seed's going to end up shaking out to be in the AFC. But, Tuan, why don't you run us through the Bengals?
Let's go right into it, Steve. So they're going to beat the Pats. They are going to drop the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are going to go 2-2 in this division. They're going to go out and beat Washington. They're going to beat the Panthers. They're going to beat the Ravens. And then they're going to go beat the Giants. So we're going up through week 6. Let me see what you have. Because I got them going 5-1 to start, Steve.
Whew. I have them, that's point in the season up until week 6. I have them going 4-2. Wins the first 2 weeks of the season. So obviously the Pats. Sorry that's obvious, but
it's so obvious. Don't worry. Don't worry. 5-12, 6-11. I'm okay with stuff to build on.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy that that's the perspective of Patriots fans right now. Week 2. They're going to get a win versus the Chiefs. They've been dying. They've been licking their chops to get this. Burrow sat a whole season trying to get this game, and he wasn't able to. Think it's a close game. Everyone's going to say points are going to be scored in this. This is going to be like a 17-14, shitty, gross, sloppy football game for both these teams trying to figure it out at this point in the season. Monday Night Football, have them losing to Washington. Like you talked about, I think Washington is going to be able to pull some of these games, and I just feel like if they won 2 straight, everyone's like, 3 in a row versus Washington, forget about it. Hammer the Bengals. Washington pulls an upset like an 18-14 type of ball game.
Right.
Week 4, win versus the Panthers. Mm-hmm. The Panthers aren't going to put up much fight, but I do feel like that's a team when everyone's been against them week 1, they could upset the Saints week 1. I was preparing for their division predictions before this, so I just remember that that's the matchup. But we talked about the loss to the Ravens. I feel like that's obviously something that we want to keep in mind that can go either way. Have them getting a W versus the Giants, but I don't think that that's an easy game because I think the Giants' defense is going to be a lot better than what people would give them credit for. And this is going to be like another low-scoring game, and if it gets carried away, it's 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it's just kind of pulling out. Maybe it's a touchdown, a late field goal, whatever the case is. I think that's the difference. I don't think that that's like a 10-point game versus the Giants by any means. And what the Giants' offense looks like, I think that it's a very capable win for the New York team as well.
Steve, love it. Here's where I have things get real interesting. They're going to go on a rough stretch.
Drop 2 straight.
Drop 2 straight. They're going to drop it to the Browns in Cleveland. They're going to drop it to the Eagles.
Got the same thing.
They're going to get a win over my boys, the Raiders, but they're going to drop 2 more at the Ravens, at the Chargers, and here's what's happening. There's going to be a point in this season where someone important on Cincy is going to get hurt. I do not wish that to happen.
Hold on. By that time that you were just talking about that, you think T. Higgins is still a Bengal?
That's the next thing. T. Higgins maybe, more than likely, will be gone. He may be gone before they're on that stretch, and they may ride high without him for 2-3 games, but then they're going to hit that stretch and start to feel it, and everyone's going, just fucking cover Jamar Chase. Let everyone else try and beat us but him. Someone's going to get banged up. It could be Chase. It could be Burrow again. We don't know how the defense actually is going to look. I think the Bengals are going to come right back down to earth. Steve, going into the bye week, I have them 6-5 going to the bye week through 11
Okay,
games.
Love that. After the 2 games that you said that we both had them dropping, I actually have them winning 2 straight. So win versus the Raiders, win versus the Ravens Thursday Night Football, loss versus the Chargers. So so that's what I'm talking about. I think that this Chargers team is going to be able to compete with some of these teams, but I think there's a very high possibility that they could drop like 2 games to like the Raiders and just like a mishap or like some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like that would be very Chargers-esque. And I still feel like it's going to take some time to like overcome like that type of identity and things like that. But this also has them at a 6-5 record going into the bye week, week 12. And I only have them getting 2 losses after that bye week, and I feel like that's when things start to change it for the Bengals. Those losses for me come right after the bye week versus the Steelers in week 13. And then surprisingly in week 15 versus the Titans. I actually think that the Titans are going to pull up some of those upsets. And I know people like are just going to write them off because, you know, even though they have like an improved wide receiver room, and I guess you could say like personnel-wise that they improved defensively, the Vrabel thing is just going to be like a big factor to that. I still think that that's going to be a good... I don't want to say a good. I want to say a tough 6-7 win football team that can definitely pull some upsets, but have them beating the Cowboys week 14 and then winning 3 straight the back end of the season versus the Browns, versus the Broncos, versus the Steelers. I have the Bengals on top at 10-7. I think T. Higgins scenario plays into this record. I think the defense plays into this record. Is Zach Moss going to be like that type of a running back? That's something to keep in mind. Like I know that they've added, you know, other backs like in that room, but still just feel like those are some of the questions that are just like screaming to you when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Steve, I'm very close to that. I have them dropping, so I have them going 3-3 to finish there. So I got them winning against the Steelers, going into Dallas and losing, a classic Dallas home win. I do have them losing at Tennessee. And Steve, I think this is going to be one of those weird-ass games. Titans just beat them up.
Wow.
I just think it's going to be one of these games where everything's working. Levis is slinging a Hopkins. He's slinging a Ridley. He's slinging a Boyd. Boyd's coming out big time in that game, too. They're going to win 2 in a row. They're going to beat the Browns at home. They're going to beat the Broncos at home, but they are going to drop that final game to the Steelers and go 9-8 and miss the playoffs.
Wow. What makes you feel that way about the Bengals? Because you were really high on them last year.
I was super high on them. They're very injury-prone, and there's just question marks, man. I think Burrow's one of the best. I do. He's one of the best in the NFL right now. I think Jamar Chase is also one of the best in the NFL right now.
Going into this year, do you have Burrow above Hurts?
Well-roundedness, yeah, but I think Philly is going to find... Hurts just seems to be healthier than Burrow almost every single season.
And maybe not healthier, but injuries able to play through. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. And he didn't look great, and that's why they went on a 6-game skid last year. What about Rodgers in that conversation?
This year, I think Rodgers is going to be one of the best. I think he's going to be like top 2, top 3 quarterback in the NFL this year. I think he's just going to have. I think the Jets are just going to have the year they've been waiting for. Will they win a Super Bowl? I don't know. But, dude, I really do think they get to that AFC Championship.
So if the Bengals struggle this year and miss the playoffs, maybe not struggle, but maybe they miss the playoffs with a 9-8 or an 8-9 record, something like that, do you feel like there starts to be conversation about the coach?
There's always going to... I think there's conversation, but I think... I was the first one to shit on Zach Taylor. I do think he's a little bit overrated, but as far as coaches in the NFL goes, like, who are you going to bring in that's better than him? If you're going to bring in Belichick, maybe. If you're going to bring in Vrabel, then yes. But, like, those are the only guys you're looking at. If you can't get a Vrabel, if you can't get one of these top guys, you're not going to get rid of Zach Taylor for some guy coming out of college.
Yeah.
Like, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So, there will be conversations because we know the media loves to just fucking throw a wrench in everything and make things harder than it is. For sure. The same way they like to put Jason Tatum against Jaylen Brown and all the memes go up. Oh, he's so upset. Like, no, he's not. They're just happy they won.
Yeah.
That's just what they like to do. The ESPN experts.
Yeah.
But
experts, yeah.
I just think that at the end of the day, since he's going to be a little bit banged up, they got 2 guys that are getting paid a ridiculous amount of money, and they're at a spot where they had a shot at winning the Super Bowl, but this is going to be that weird 3-year skid where they're still competing, but it's going to be a couple more years until they get back to that conference championship level, I think.
Okay. Since the Sandbox fans, these were the AFC North schedule predictions. Dying to know what you guys think were, some of the great takeaways and predictions on the year. Maybe some of you guys completely disagree with these predictions, but I think that this is a fun little exercise to break down the roster. We're getting close to football, but we're not there yet. So these are the engaging conversations I feel like we should have up until July comes around and we can start, getting into the fantasy football territory and things like that. But we have the NFC North schedule predictions coming up real soon. We want you guys to stick around for those. So make sure you guys are checking this out on your favorite podcast platform or YouTube where you can watch the entire episode. And don't forget to go check out everything you need from Sandbox MMA over on YouTube. Twan's slinging all the MMA content, a lot going on in the MMA world. And, you know, I think his reactions are hilarious. So you guys should go and check those out. Yeah, just... sometimes he can get a little vulgar, but
not for kids. It's rated R.
Yeah. But you guys know the deal. Peace, love, 5 stars, nothing less.